I take the gun out slowly. I turn, I cock the pistol. Bang! It goes off. She hits the ground. She goes down. He goes down, screaming.
In a twisted turn of events, Alec Baldwin's career and life was hit with a huge blow due to an unforeseen accident on set, and with the suit reopened over 2 years later, Alec Baldwin pleads his case in court. In this video, we're going to explore Alec Baldwin's confession in court to the killing on the Rust set, the killing of Hutchins. The timeline leading up to the criminal trial of Alec Baldwin is filled with a series of dramatic and shocking events that captivated the world. It was October 21st, 2021, and the day began like any other on the set of Rust, a Western film being shot at the Bonanza Creek Ranch in New Mexico. However, the routine was shattered when a prop gun held by Alec Baldwin discharged during a rehearsal. The bullet struck cinematographer Halyna Hutchins in the chest and director Joel Souza in the shoulder. Hutchins was airlifted to the University of New Mexico Hospital, where she was pronounced dead. Souza was treated for his injuries and later released. Word soon spread of the accident, and the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office soon launched an investigation into the shooting. Authorities began interviewing cast and crew members, seizing evidence, and trying to piece together how a live round ended up in a prop gun. The production of Rust was immediately halted, and the set became a crime scene. It was soon reported that several crew members had walked off the set earlier in the day, citing concerns over working conditions and safety protocols. These revelations raised questions about the overall safety measures in place during the production of Rust. In the days following the incident, Alec Baldwin gave a tearful interview to ABC News, expressing his deep sorrow and disbelief. He further went on to state that he did not pull the trigger, claiming that the gun went off on its own. Baldwin's statement was later met with skepticism by many, including the prosecutors, who argued that it was highly unlikely for the gun to discharge without the trigger being pulled. Baldwin's emotional plea did little to quell the growing public outcry for accountability. On the other hand, the film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, facing similar fate as Alec Baldwin, broke her silence, stating through her attorneys that she had no idea how a live round ended up in the gun. Gutierrez-Reed, who was relatively inexperienced, became a focal point of the investigation, as her qualifications and the overall safety protocols on set were called into question. The Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office released a trove of documents, including witness statements and evidence logs. These documents revealed that the production had faced multiple safety complaints and that there had been at least 2 previous accidental discharges of firearms on set. The Santa Fe County District Attorney's Office announced that it would be pursuing criminal charges in connection with the shooting. So Alec Baldwin and Hannah Gutierrez-Reed were both charged with involuntary manslaughter. The announcement sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry, as it was rare for an actor to face criminal charges for an on-set accident. Baldwin's legal team filed a motion to dismiss the charges, arguing that the actor had relied on the professionals on set to ensure the gun was safe and that he had no reason to believe it contained live ammunition. Gutierrez-Reed's attorneys also argued that she was being scapegoated for systemic failures in the production's safety protocols. So, the pre-trial hearings began, drawing intense media attention. Every development was dissected by legal analysts and entertainment reporters. Baldwin's high-profile status ensured that the case remained in the public eye. The actor continued to maintain his innocence, insisting that he was being unfairly targeted. In a shocking twist, in April 2023, the Santa Fe County District Attorney's Office announced that it was dropping the charges against Baldwin. The decision was based on new evidence that suggested the gun may have been modified, making it more likely to discharge without the trigger being pulled. This dismissal was a significant victory for Baldwin, but it did not mark the end of the legal saga. Civil lawsuits against Baldwin and the production company continued to move forward. The families of Halyna Hutchins and Joel Souza filed wrongful death and personal injury lawsuits, seeking damages for the tragic incident. With these lawsuits, the families hoped to keep the case in the headlines until justice was served. Lucky for them, on January 19, 2024, Alec Baldwin was once again indicted on the charges of involuntary manslaughter, and the armorer Hannah Reed went to trial first. To pay the legal costs, her father, Thel Reed, a longtime movie armorer, started a GoFundMe campaign, but it was shut down for violating rules against raising money to legally defend cases involving violent crimes. As the trial of Hannah Gutierrez-Reed unfolded, Santa Fe Judge Mary Marlowe Summer had great pressure on her to reach the bottom of the case. Her role was not just to oversee the proceedings, but to ensure that justice was served in a case that had captivated the nation. During the proceedings, Special Prosecutor Jason Bowles argued that she had been sloppy, negligent, and reckless throughout the production. Bowles had asked the judge to sentence Gutierrez-Reed to probation and said he'd appeal her guilty decision. Fast forward to March 6, 2024, Hannah Reed was convicted of involuntary manslaughter granddaughter. 5 weeks later, she was sentenced to 18 months in prison. On the other hand, Alec Baldwin's trial began on Tuesday, July 9, 2024. The prosecution gave their opening statement previewing their case against Alec Baldwin, a case built on a series of damning accusations, each more shocking than the last. They argued that Baldwin's actions directly led to the tragic death of Helena Hutchins and the injury of Joel Souza.
There are people who act in a reckless manner and place other individuals in danger and act without due regard for the safety of others. That, you will hear, was the defendant, Alexander Baldwin.
The courtroom was filled with tension as they thoroughly laid out their case, detailing the numerous breaches of firearm safety that they claimed Baldwin committed. Firstly, they highlighted Baldwin's failure to personally check the firearm before handling it.
But you'll see evidence, ladies and gentlemen, that each time the defendant handled this firearm, he did not do a safety check with that inexperienced armorer.
Industry standards dictate that actors must verify that a gun is unloaded or loaded with blanks before using it. This protocol is a fundamental aspect of firearm safety on film sets, designed to prevent accidents. They also argued that Baldwin's failure to adhere to this basic safety measure amounted to a severe breach of protocol. They claimed that Baldwin relied solely on the assistant director's declaration that the gun was cold, meaning it was not loaded with live ammunition. This reliance, they argued, was a critical mistake. Furthermore, they pointed out the lack of proper training and supervision on the set of Rust. They alleged that Baldwin and the production team cut corners to save time and money, resulting in an unsafe environment. The film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, was relatively inexperienced and overwhelmed with her responsibilities. The prosecution argued that Baldwin, as a producer, should have ensured that a more experienced armorer was hired. They also stated that testimonies from crew members described Gutierrez-Reed as struggling to manage the demands of her role, further underscoring the unsafe conditions on set. In a particularly shocking revelation, the prosecutor claimed that Baldwin pointed the gun at people and cocked the hammer of the gun when he wasn't supposed to.
We'll see him using this gun as a pointer to point at people, to point at things. You will see him cock the hammer when he's not supposed to cock the hammer. You will see him put his finger on the trigger when his finger's not supposed to be on the trigger.
You will see him put his hand on the trigger when he is not supposed to put his hands on the trigger. They also claimed that there was prior knowledge to the safety breaches on the set, and it led to some crew members leaving. They also pointed out Baldwin's involvement in the decision-making process regarding safety protocols on set. They argued that Baldwin, as a producer, had a direct hand in shaping the safety measures in place. This involvement, they argued, makes him even more at fault for the breaches of firearm safety that led to the tragic accident. The prosecution's accusations painted a damning picture of negligence and disregard for basic safety protocols, raising serious questions about the responsibilities of actors and producers on film sets. Another significant piece of evidence the prosecutor presented was the body cam footage from Officer Nicholas Lafleur. This footage provided a raw and unfiltered look at the immediate aftermath of the shooting. It showed Alec Baldwin visibly distraught and the chaotic scene on the set of Rust. The footage was a stark reminder of the human cost of the tragedy and set the tone for the rest of the trial. Judge Marlowe paid close attention to this evidence, understanding that it was crucial in establishing the context of the incident. The testimonies of key witnesses were instrumental in shaping the judge's understanding of the case. Dave Halls, the assistant director who handed the gun to Baldwin, was a pivotal figure, but his testimony was filled with contradictions, and under cross-examination, he admitted to not thoroughly checking the firearm himself. This admission was a critical moment in the trial, as it highlighted the multiple layers of failure that led to the tragedy and landed him a 6-month probation sentence. Firearms experts were brought in to examine the gun and provide their testimony. Some experts suggested that it was possible for the gun to discharge without the trigger being pulled if it was not properly maintained or if there was a mechanical failure. They also pointed to the fact that vintage firearms and their replicas can sometimes have issues with their firing mechanisms. However, other experts argued that such an occurrence was extremely rare and that the likelihood of the gun going off on its own was minimal. Alec Baldwin's defense in his court case. While all these accusations were being thrown at Alec Baldwin, his defense attorneys had been rigorously crafting their argument to counter. When it was time to present their case, they emphasized that Baldwin was simply an actor, and it wasn't his job to check if there were live bullets in the gun.
On this movie set, there were people responsible for ensuring the safety of the set and the firearm. Those people failed in their duties, but Alec Baldwin committed no crime.
Central to their defense was the assertion that the responsibility for ensuring the safety of firearms on set lay with specific crew members, particularly the armorer and the assistant director.
It is undisputed that the bullet was loaded into the gun by the armorer, the person on set whose responsibility it was to ensure the gun was safe.
Hannah Gutierrez-Reed was tasked with overseeing all firearms used during the production. Her role was crucial, as she was responsible for maintaining the weapons, ensuring they were safe, and instructing the cast and crew on their proper use. Gutierrez-Reed had stated that she checked the gun and ensured its safety, but the defense argued that her checks were insufficient and that she failed to detect the live round. Assistant Director Dave Halls also plays a pivotal role in the defense's narrative. Halls reportedly handed the gun to Baldwin, declaring it safe.
And finally, the first assistant director's job, the head of safety, Dave Halls, checks it before it goes to the actor. And he will tell you he made a tragic mistake. He failed to detect a live bullet. And Alec Baldwin had nothing to do with that either.
The defense claimed that Hall's assurance misled Baldwin into believing the gun was safe to use. Baldwin is a seasoned actor with decades of experience handling firearms in numerous roles throughout his career. His familiarity with prop guns and the protocols surrounding them adds another layer to the defense's argument that he had no reason to suspect foul play. Baldwin's defense team argued that he relied on the expertise of the professionals around him and had no reason to question their assurances. However, the courtroom's opinion about Alec Baldwin took a dramatic turn when his lawyer, Luke Nickus, attempted to retract his earlier statement that he did not pull the trigger. This move raised eyebrows and sparked intense debates about the implications for Baldwin's defense strategy and the overall case. The retraction attempt was a calculated legal maneuver aimed at mitigating Baldwin's liability by shifting the narrative from an outright denial to a more nuanced explanation. The defense made this move in hopes to create reasonable doubt about Baldwin's direct responsibility for the tragic incident. This strategy hangs on the argument that Baldwin's actions were unintentional and influenced by the belief that the gun was safe. Legal analysts have also noted that Baldwin's defense strategy is not uncommon in high-profile cases. By shifting the focus to systemic issues, the defense aims to create reasonable doubt about Baldwin's direct responsibility. This approach, however, is not without its challenges, because the defense must now convince the jury that Baldwin's actions were entirely unintentional and influenced by external factors rather than a result of negligence or recklessness. On the other hand, public reactions to the case have been mixed. While some sympathize with Baldwin and view him as a victim of unfortunate circumstances, others believe he should be held accountable for his actions. The case has sparked a broader conversation about safety in the film industry and the responsibilities of actors and crew members when handling dangerous props. As the legal proceedings continued, Baldwin's defense team remained focused on distancing him from the initial statement that he did not pull the trigger. The retraction attempt was a bold move, one that could either strengthen Baldwin's defense or backfire if the jury perceived it as an attempt to evade responsibility. Turning point in the case. Earlier, in the week of the trial, Baldwin's legal team secured a major victory when Judge Summer ruled that his role as a co-producer on Rust was not relevant to the trial.
I'm having real difficulty with the state's position that they want to show that as a producer, he didn't follow guidelines, and therefore, as an actor, Mr. Baldwin did all these things wrong.
This prevented prosecutors from arguing that Baldwin bore special responsibility on the set. That way, he couldn't be held solely responsible for the accident. Although this was a significant win, as the trial progressed, the courtroom became a battleground of conflicting testimonies and intense emotions. The prosecution continued to paint a picture of his negligence and recklessness, which led to back-and-forth exchanges from both ends. For a while, it felt almost like all hope was lost. But then, the turning point in the case came when it was discovered that the state had hidden certain important evidence, causing the judge to call on Marissa Poppel to take the stand. Marissa Poppel is a Santa Fe County Sheriff's crime scene technician. Her task was to thoroughly document and collect evidence, focusing on the firearm that discharged and the ammunition present on set that day.
As you testified yesterday, you collected items from the church that you thought were relevant to this case, correct?
Yes.
And some of the things that you thought gave insight into what happened, correct?
Yes.
So, with news of hidden and tampered evidence, she was brought to the stand for cross-examination. When Baldwin's lawyer, Alex Spiro, began interrogating Marissa Popel, his questioning was intense. His goal was to expose the inconsistencies and lapses in the investigation. His questions focused on the thoroughness of the search conducted by law enforcement. He asked Marissa if she and her team had joked about the length of time it would take to search every box on the set. The lawyer then pressed further, questioning the methods used during the search. He pointed out that shaking entire boxes to see if they rattled was not a reliable way to determine if they contained live rounds. He once again asked her if she only shook the box during investigation. His relentless questioning aimed to show that the investigation was flawed and that law enforcement had used the same careless methods they accused the armorer of using. He continued to grill Marissa, questioning the thoroughness of the search and the accuracy of her previous testimony. He then brought up the issue of the surveillance footage, questioning why it was not collected despite being mentioned in the search warrant. After some exchanges from both sides, she later confessed that she had been instructed to collect the cameras, but failed to do so. Alec's lawyer then pointed out that the footage could have shown crucial details, such as when people came and left the prop house and who handled the ammunition. His questioning also revealed that Marissa Popel did not recall looking for the surveillance footage, raising doubts about the thoroughness of the investigation. The cross-examination continued, with the lawyer questioning the collection of DNA, fingerprints, and cell phones from key individuals involved in the case. His questions aimed to show that the investigation had significant gaps and that crucial evidence was not collected. As he continued, he asked Marissa about the source of the live round that caused the tragic accident.
And it contains the shot list and the script for that day, correct?
I don't know exactly.
Her response revealed that despite the extensive investigation, the source of the live round remained a mystery. The cross-examination also touched on the timing of the search and the fact that they might not have been focused on finding the source. Isn't it true that you were just trying to get this over with so the prosecution could focus on Alec Baldwin? His questions aimed to show that the investigation was rushed and that there was a bias against Baldwin. He also pointed out the unique relationship between her and the prosecution. He then asked Marissa about the evidence in question and why she didn't send the evidence to the FBI for further analysis. The lawyer's questioning aimed to show that the decision not to send the evidence to the FBI was made, despite knowing it was a critical piece of evidence in the case. The cross-examination revealed significant gaps and inconsistencies in the investigation, raising questions about the thoroughness and fairness of the process. The case, however, reached a boiling point when Marissa Popel confessed that a man had come to the authorities with ammunition earlier in the year.
He turned in multiple .45 rounds.
Including rounds that match the round that struck Ms. Hutchins, right?
Again, I wouldn't use the word match without further analysis.
And the reason that we don't have further analysis is you all didn't send this to the FBI for further analysis, did you?
We did not.
The Colt .45 rounds were delivered to the sheriff's office in March by Troy Teske, a former police officer and friend of Thel Reed, the stepfather of Rust armorer Hannah Gutierrez Reed. Popel testified that her supervisor instructed her to create a report documenting that the individual came and gave them the ammunition, and she filed it under a case number different from the Rust case. Baldwin's attorneys argued that they should have been informed about the Colt .45 rounds and given the opportunity to determine their relevance to the case. This revelation played a significant role in the judge's ruling in the case. The defense contended that the prosecution's failure to disclose this evidence undermined Baldwin's right to a fair trial. Later, during a motion hearing, Special Prosecutor Kari T. Morrissey said the state initially had been provided a photograph of the ammunition by Teske, a retired officer who lives in Arizona. She testified that the rounds provided by Teske did not strike her as having significant evidentiary value because they never left Arizona and the set of Rust was in New Mexico. She further explained that the rounds appeared dissimilar to the live rounds found on the set of Rust. She explained that the only way the rounds would be relevant to the Rust investigation is if it had any similarity to the live rounds that were found on the set of Rust. She also explained why she never took any steps to collect the ammunition. When Teske later brought it to the sheriff's office, it was taken and tagged into evidence by one Corporal Hancock. However, Prosecutor Morrissey stated that she did not realize the ammunition would be filed under a different case number from the Rust investigation. Judge Summers then asked for the evidence to be brought in. She put on latex gloves and examined the bullets. After examining the rounds, she confirmed that it matched the ones on the set. The final verdict and reactions. In issuing her verdict, Judge Sommer said that a dismissal with prejudice, as sought by the defense, is a very extreme sanction, and that she needed to make a very good record of her decision. She called the state's withholding of this information intentional and deliberate, and that it came to light so late in the proceedings that it undermines the defendant's preparation for trial. If this conduct does not rise to the level of bad faith, it certainly comes so close to bad faith as to show signs of scorching, she said. As a final verdict, Judge Sommer dismissed the case against Alec Baldwin with prejudice, meaning the involuntary manslaughter case against Baldwin cannot be refiled. The courtroom was a scene of raw emotion as Baldwin, now 66, sobbed and put his face in his hands upon hearing the judge's decision. He then embraced his wife, Hilaria Baldwin, as lawyers and spectators began to file out. Outside the courtroom, Special Prosecutor Carrie Morrissey expressed her disappointment with the court's decision, but stated that she respected the ruling. The reactions to the dismissal of the case were as diverse as you could imagine, with some thinking it was fair and others very disappointed. Speaking of disappointment, attorney Gloria Allred, representing the Hutchins family in a separate civil suit, emphasized that the dismissal of the criminal case did not exonerate Baldwin. "We are dedicated to holding Alec Baldwin and the entire Rust team accountable in our civil lawsuit," Allred stated. The civil suit against Baldwin in New Mexico is ongoing, and the Hutchins family remains determined to seek justice for Helena. Brian J. Panish, attorney for Helena Hutchins' husband, Matthew Hutchins, also weighed in on the court's decision. "We look forward to presenting all the evidence to a jury and to hold Mr. Baldwin accountable for his actions in the senseless death of Helena Hutchins," Panish wrote in a statement. Following the verdict, 2 jurors in the Alec Baldwin trial also spoke out about their own doubts regarding the validity of the case against the actor. In an interview with the New York Times, jurors number 7 and 9 said they thought it was clearly an accident and that Baldwin shouldn't even be on trial. Joanna Hang, who works in advertising and communication and was known as juror number 7, said that as the trial went on, it didn't seem like a very strong case. She continued, "It was clearly an accident, and the idea that there's anything purposeful or the idea that there was this grave carelessness that caused this didn't seem realistic to me." Juror number 9, Gabriele Picayo, a scientist at Los Alamos National Laboratory, said her opinion began to change when she heard that the armorer on the set of the film, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, had already been convicted of involuntary manslaughter. Picayo said she had started to move towards the direction of thinking that this was very silly and he should not be on trial. She also felt that as an actor, Baldwin should have been able to trust the people, on set to do their job. Another twist in the story is the co-special prosecutor, Erlinda Ocampo Johnson, resigning from the case just hours before the dismissal. She would later tell NBC News that she didn't believe the hiding of the evidence was intentional. Alec Baldwin also took to his Instagram to appreciate everyone that supported him. In an Instagram post, he wrote, "There are too many people who have supported me to thank just now. To all of you, you'll never know how much I appreciate your kindness towards my family."